Hello there, my name is Lee Davey. I am not an alcoholic. I refuse to be anonymous, and I am someone who doesn't drink alcohol. And my guest today is Emily Ann Peterson. I love those earrings, Emily.
Thank you.
They're absolutely fantastic.
They're just fun.
I want a pair.
I got them at the store here in the US called TJ Maxx. Actually, if I need to take them off, no, let me know. I'm using my other mic, so
It's so funny. You have a store in the US called TJ Maxx, and of course, we have a store in the UK called TK Maxx. I'm pretty sure it's the same store. It's got to be the same store.
It might be.
It's one of those where
It's like home goods and clothes and things.
Yeah. You go in there and you pick up like a Calvin Klein top that would cost 80 quid somewhere. It's now costing 40. That type of thing. Yeah. I love it. Yeah. I love it. Yeah. I absolutely love it. Let's dive straight into this, Emily. How does music make you feel?
Music makes me feel so many different things. I think that's the beauty of it, is that it exists to be the vessel for all kinds of feelings. But generally, when I'm playing and performing music, I feel really connected.
Connected to
people, to the people I'm playing for, connected to myself. I feel connected to the world around me, just in general. It's important.
Yes, I'm a musician in making. I got a musician in here somewhere. If you chip away at it, there's one in there somewhere. And I'm currently on day 15 of a 365-day Face My Fear challenge.
Yeah.
So I imagine by the end of 365 days, I will be playing something. And I kind of like the cello. So we take my daughter to a music class called Little Notes, and the woman who runs it is called Jude, and she gets her cello out and she calls her cello Bart, and she plays the cello, and all these little kids just fall in love with this cello, and it's a beautiful sound.
It's gorgeous. And I love the instrument, and I loved being connected to other people through that instrument, which is so wonderful. It's the only instrument that has both the range of a female and a male voice, which I think is one of the reasons why a lot of people enjoy it, is because our brains just naturally go, oh, that sounds familiar, in terms of range. And it behaves like a human voice as well. So the stringed instruments do.
And it's really important that you said that when you play, it helps you feel connected, because I know on Johann Hari's TED Talk, which, we talk about in the Truth About Alcohol training course, he asked the question, what is the opposite of addiction? And comes up with the answer that the opposite of addiction is connection. So if you're listening to this and you're struggling with an alcohol issue, and, one of the ways to get over that is to get connected with people, with the universe, with yourself. What better way to do that than to pick up a musical instrument and start spending your time learning a new craft, Emily, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I mean, learning a new instrument, it not only does it take a lot of time, and it takes a lot of brain power. So if you're trying to use it as a distraction method from distracting you from your addiction, then that can be a really good thing. But it's also a lot of work too.
Yeah.
So it's not one of the things when I'm no longer teaching cello these days, which for reasons that I'm sure we'll get into. When I first was teaching, and I would get a brand new student, and they'd come in for their first lesson, I would do my best to have the what we call it here in the US, the come to Jesus talk. This is going to be really hard, just so you know, you're going to want to give up. And you have picked definitely not the easiest instrument to learn.
Right.
There are so many things to learn. There's so many things to get better at. And I would say I've been playing this instrument for 2 decades, and I still have a ton left to learn. So this is not I'm going to learn a Taylor Swift song and a guitar and, call it a day after a week. So, and I feel like it's a similar journey with addiction and recovery. You have to be in it for the long commitment, long-term commitment.
Yeah, well, we had that. I have that same conversation regularly at the Truth About Alcohol. Like, normally when people join a website or a brand or a company online, they are introduced into an email campaign that eagerly kind of wants to lap them up and to turn them into a customer. My email campaign turns people away because it just continually says to them, look, this is going to be hard. Look, this training course is going to be brutal. I'm going to need you to bleed. You're going to have to do homework when you don't want to. Every fiber of your body is going to be saying, I don't want to do this because I love drinking alcohol, right? So, we got to have that conversation. Otherwise, people rock up, they think it's going to be easy, and they quit within like a couple of weeks. So I'm with you on the what did you say, the Come to Jesus talk?
Yeah, we call it a Come to Jesus talk.
Come to Jesus talk. I'm with you. I got a name for it. So Emily, I'm fascinated. So, but I used to like sports before I become a workaholic. And it would always fascinate me that the tennis star would always hurt his hand. The footballer would always break his foot. And I used to think, how does this happen all the time? And then I was looking at your story, and you were this superlative cellist, probably still are, obviously, but then you get diagnosed with a tremor in your right hand. Tell me a little bit about that, and what thoughts were going through your head at that time.
Sure. Well, I denied the fact that I had a tremor for several months before I went to the doctor first. Because I was thinking like, oh, it's just caffeine. My hands, I've just had too much coffee, But I started noticing other people noticing it. Like I talk with my hands a lot. And so I would start to notice other people not looking at my face or being engaged with what I was saying, but starting to notice that my hand was shaking just a little bit. And, I would just see their eyes flick over to my hand. And that happened enough for me to go like, okay, I'm not just imagining this. This is actually a thing now. But didn't really have my life at the time didn't really have the space for me to sit down and ponder the future of my health,
Yeah.
And so I brought my cello into the studio one day before I was going to teach lessons for the day. And as I was warming up my instrument, I heard the tremor through my cello. And that was the first day that I called my doctor almost immediately after that lesson, because I knew that if I couldn't hide it after 20 years of playing, or if I couldn't compensate for that kind of technique after 20 years of playing, then it wasn't me, and we need to figure something out.
Yeah.
And what made the diagnosis, I have one essential tremor in my right hand. It is degenerative, so it's going to get worse over time. And it's also hereditary. So it came from one of the sides of my family, possibly both. But it's very common. It's a very common diagnosis, especially for people over the age of 40. I was 27 at the time of the diagnosis. So I was really young, and it was somewhat abnormal to get that diagnosis. It was even more abnormal for that diagnosis to be so life-altering. Because, if you're a contractor, like construction worker, yes, you need precision in your hand, but the majority of your work is like doing big, large muscle movements, which doesn't require an intense amount of precision with relaxed hands, which is what my bow needed. So, it's like a surgeon finding out that they have tremors. You can't be cutting in on somebody's scalp when your hand's shaking.
That's what came up for me just then. I was thinking surgeon in my head. It's wow, that must have been a harrowing time for you, because we human beings, we like to identify ourselves with our careers or our chosen field of loves, and we become not Emily Ann Peterson, we become a cellist, and not Lee Davey, I don't even know what I am, but I know for 20 years I was a railwayman. Now right. When someone asks me what I do, I get a little bit confused, and I confuse people. But a podcast host,
as someone then if someone who is trying to remove themselves from an alcohol culture, that's also really hard to do as well. You know, if
Mm,
you know you need to remove yourself from friends who really identify themselves with the beer you guys are drinking or the parties y'all are having, that kind of thing. Trying to change that identity, and you can't just change your identity. Sometimes you have to deconstruct your identity first
mm.
before you can build it back up into something that you do want. So that was what was really shocking to me at the time of the diagnosis, was I didn't know how much I defined myself by my proximity to my instrument.
Yeah.
I mean, my rent was paid by this instrument. All of my friends were in existence because of this instrument.
Mm.
All of my colleagues were centered around this instrument. Um, there were like vacations I was taking, you know, and trips that I was taking because of this instrument. And so every square inch of my life um, was filtered by this, you know, living with this instrument. So it made, you know, the threat of that instrument no longer being part of my life, it was harrowing.
It is very, very similar. Like you say, it is very, very similar to somebody all of a sudden decided to go from being a drinker to a non-drinker because all of their friends will drink. All of their parties and social events will revolve around drinking. All right, drinking doesn't pay the bills. But other than that, everything is exactly the same. And this is one of the reasons that I got you on the show.
It might be the bulk part of your bills, though.
Yeah, too right. This is the only one that's going to work the good way around. But this is why I got you on the show, because here
Yeah.
you are realizing in that moment that, oh wow, I always thought I was going to be a cellist. You know, the last part of my life, if not forever. Now I might have to rethink that. I don't know how to do anything else. And I know I certainly felt that when I was in my 19th year as a railwayman and I stopped drinking, and I knew in my heart that I had to take the next step. If I was really going to grow as someone who doesn't drink alcohol, I really needed to find a job that was more aligned with my meaning and purpose. The thing that went through my head all the time was, yeah, but Lee, you don't know nothing else. Like, you have done this since you were 16 years of age. You know nothing else. You know nothing else. And it's the resistance talking, trying to keep me in my safe job because it doesn't want me to exert any pressure on my brain and subconscious. But yours is different because you had no choice, right? So talk a little bit about that fear, in as much as now you've got to do something else, but you don't really know what to do.
Yeah, I mean, I knew that I was called to be a teacher and a musician, in like like however spiritually called you want to, go
Mm,
for it. But like there was something in me that I knew that I got so much fulfillment from teaching people how to express themselves.
right.
I, so I I had been previously I found out later after going through all of this research on what is bravery and how does this play out and what are the ingredients of bravery, all of these things. I later discovered that the reason why I was able to take, baby steps after that diagnosis was because I had previously gone through a recovery through eating disorder, from an eating disorder. And so I had done very similar hard, like mind, body, spirit labor.
Mm,
But there's no other word, but labor
word.
is really,
Yeah, yeah.
so the skills that I learned through that really dark night of the soul, like really, really hard stuff. Those skills that I learned, I didn't know I was building skills during that time,
Mm,
because I was just focused on just don't screw it up today. Don't screw it up today. Don't screw it up today. Don't screw it up today, and then after going through it and coming out the other end and successfully, I, I'm going through this new season of bravery with this diagnosis and seeing that, oh, these are the same skills. Like I can pull these out of the closet and go, okay, yeah, I know what to do next. So one of the things that I did was I was able to take a 6-week long artist residency in the mountains of Leavenworth, Washington. Um, and I had before my diagnosis, I had applied for this residency thinking that I would write and record new music for the cello. But when I got out there, I just was like in the furthest mood from writing and recording new music for this instrument, because it hurt. Like it, you know, almost physically hurt me to play this instrument, because, you know, every note that I couldn't play like I wanted to was a reminder that my entire life was about ready to change.
Yeah.
You know, and it was not something that I really didn't feel like doing it. So I asked this, you know, my host, the arts organization that was hosting me for this residency, if it was all right if I just, you know, did other music stuff, but not cello music stuff. And they were totally fine with it. Not all arts organizations are okay with that kind of flip around, but they were really gracious. And so I spent those 6 weeks basically creatively sulking and doing everything but playing the cello. And I needed that break. Like, I think when you are deconstructing an identity, you have to grieve what you lost in order to move on and move through the next stage of things. So I imagine that the same thing would happen with alcohol too, that you would have to grieve, you know, friendships that were going to change and other relationships that are going to change. And, you know, in some cases, people's jobs and their livelihoods change from their choice to not drink alcohol.
I think the first thing that comes to mind is that we have to grieve the loss of alcohol, because alcohol in itself becomes your best friend, because you use it as a coping mechanism for all the worst disasters that befall you in life. Like everything that you cannot cope with, alcohol becomes your best friend. It's like Superman, right? So you have to grieve the loss of alcohol. What is interesting that I stumble across a lot when I'm talking to people in the Strive Community Forum is that when it comes to deconstructing your life, very often I find that people look at their life and the constraints that they have and try to not deconstruct, but try to reconstruct around what is already there. And I prefer to coach people, no. Let's just think that there's nobody. There's just you. Now what do you want? Free from constraints of wives, husbands, children, jobs. What do you want? Because if you reconstruct or construct or build upon something that's already there, especially when you've stopped drinking alcohol, invariably you'll look at it, Emily, and you'll think to yourself, I didn't want this. I didn't create this. But if you go from blue sky thinking, which is really, really, really difficult, and it sounds like something that you did, it can be liberating, frightening, terrifying, and beautifully wonderful at the same time, right?
Yeah. And I would also say that, you know, you need to do some, and part of this is that deep soul searching that you're, you know, prompting people to go through. But sometimes it's, you know, sometimes recovery doesn't have to be so hard. You can ask for help, and sometimes that help can come from the form of utilizing the constraints that already exist in your life, to like lean on those constraints to give you some like space and time to figure out what your next move is going to be. So say for instance, you kind of know deep down that you might not want to stay married to this person.
Yeah.
As someone who's not drinking alcohol anymore. But there are other things in your life that you do want to keep, like your kiddos, and you really love your children. And so you kind of know, okay, well, in order for me to make the next best healthy move, it might not be blowing everything up all at once.
Yeah.
It might be, okay, well, I'm going to stick with it for like 3 years, and you get through this next season, and then we'll start talking about like how to part separate ways and make those separate moves. So
Yeah.
and in those cases, it's really important to utilize those constraints as tools rather than complete obstacles. In a similar way that a snowboarder utilizes their board as both a friction maker and a friction alliever. You know, the board is flat, they stay, and if the board is carving into the snow, then they're able to turn and aim in specific directions. And so they're utilizing the lack of and the existence of friction in their life to get what they want. And
no, I think that's really important. Yeah. I mean, because, yeah, I don't want to give off the wrong impression here. I'm not saying, I'm not saying, okay, blue sky thinking, I want a new wife. Like, that's what I want right now. I want a new wife. It's more about how do I want someone I'm going to live with for the rest of my life to treat me? Like, what are the values I want in a relationship? Those type of things. And then sitting down and having those conversations with your significant other and saying, look, you know, I would like us to talk about what is important to us, et cetera, et cetera. Because what I find a lot, it's very unusual when people come to Strive Forum that couples are actually having those conversations, that they're not having them. It's like we are generating that courage or bravery, which we'll talk about in a minute, to actually help each other go and have those conversations, even by like having role play online. You know, it's like, okay, I'm going to pretend I'm your husband. You tell me what you need, and I'm going to like play devil's advocate here and see where it goes. So throughout this time, then you're having to face one of the most difficult times of your life, if not the most difficult. And the first word that actually comes out, or two words that come up, are courage and bravery. Your book is called Bare Naked Bravery. So define bravery, because I saw your TV show appearance and I thought it was interesting how you put that forward. So if you can share with the audience your definition of bravery, that'd be great.
Well, one of the things that really frustrated me after I was diagnosed and after I came back to city life after living in the mountains for those 6 weeks, you know, I came out of the mountains recognizing that I wasn't just a cellist, that I was a musician and that I was an artist and that I had something to say. And if I was going to say it, and if I was going to make all these changes in my life, I was going to have to be really brave because I had no idea what to do next. And part of that process, just my personality type, I really love to research things, especially if I don't know anything about it. So I, you know, read the books, did the things, you know, went through the whole round of research of things that already existed, definitions that already existed, and they weren't good enough for me.
Yeah.
You know, like I didn't find the answers that I was looking for. And I think one of the main reasons why I didn't find the answer to what is bravery, or define bravery, was because it actually has 3 layers. There are 3 kinds of bravery. The first, and it's all basis on how subjective bravery is. So you have internal bravery, which has probably happened, you know, if somebody is like, you know, they acknowledge that, wow, they've hit rock bottom and alcohol is the big problem here. A lot of those internal bravery moments for me happen like when I'm alone and in my car after coming out of a party or a meeting or whatever. So I'm like having this like personal one, you know, internal reckoning of, wow, that was a brave thing for me to do, or wow, I'm going to have to do this brave thing soon.
Right.
External bravery, which is the second form, is, you know, you saying to a friend, hey, I think I'm an alcoholic, or I think I have a problem with alcohol. Then as long as someone else is involved in that situation and they know that you're doing something brave and you know that you're doing something brave, that would be external bravery. Because you can do internal bravery out in public. Like, say, for instance, if I was going through a season of depression, if I put on pants and went to the grocery store, sometimes that's like a miracle,
right,
for people who with depression.
yeah,
and so the grocery clerk doesn't know that you're being brave by stepping out and going and getting milk and eggs and bread, but you do.
right,
And so that's that internal bravery. So
internal, yeah,
you're the one that knows, I am doing something really brave right now.
right,
The external bravery would be that, wow, we both know that you're doing something really brave right now.
yeah,
Then there's this third form of bravery, which actually really just lit me up when I discovered it. It's what I call resonant bravery. It is this like third hand bravery that, if you see somebody who's jumping into a burning building to save somebody else, you, the witness, might think that they are very brave. They probably might think that they're very brave, but there's a strong likelihood that they might not, especially if they are a professional firefighter.
right,
or if they have the training, or if they've done that a million times before, or so many other reasons why they wouldn't think that that's a very brave thing to do. So the resonant bravery is this acknowledgement that you are witnessing a moment of bravery or a feat of bravery, or courage. And bravery and courage are just synonyms.
they're there, yeah,
They're just synonyms. They're just
yeah,
exactly the same thing. So they have different etymological sources. So like, courage has, core from the heart, right? So it has heart roots. And so that being said, these three forms of bravery can be really, when you acknowledge that there are these three forms, sometimes when you are looking at how confusing or like, ethereal or nebulous bravery can sometimes seem, like, just be brave, or just, have courage, friend. That's sometimes that kind of garners a roll of the eyes from me. Just you can't just slap bravery on your arm and call it a day. There's more to it than that. So because you can't just fake it, right? And oftentimes bravery feels like fear. And so there's a long answer to your question, but I would say bravery is when we are able to utilize our fears.
I was going to say, I was getting in my head then, I was not quite sure of the difference between bravery and fear. Because I've been doing this fear project, you said then not to fake it, for example. So I want to join the Seth Godin Alt MBA program.
Yeah.
And it's going to cost $3,800.
Yeah.
And I don't have $3,800. And I'm doing this fear challenge. And I know that I could do a Kickstarter program and ask people to give me $3,800 because I'm going to use the work that I do on the Seth Godin Alt MBA to change people's lives for the better. But I'm so scared of doing that because what am I afraid of? I'm afraid of being judged, of being a beggar, of being, just being a beggar, I guess. Now, I can't fake my way out of that, but what I will do, because I have to do it, because I've committed myself to do this, every time I'm afraid of something, I have to do it. I'm just going to do it. I'm just going to create a Kickstarter campaign. I'm going to write and I'm going to press publish. And once I've told myself, well, I've got to do it, that my fear goes away.
Right.
But
So
there's
a difference between, so it is not necessarily a brave thing to encounter fear, swallow and squash it, and do it anyways.
Okay.
Sometimes that's a really stupid thing to do, especially if you're a single lady walking down a dark alley.
Right.
right?
Yes.
You listening to that fear in that moment is a really good idea.
Right. Right.
But the utilization of that fear doesn't mean you have to abandon or eradicate the fear. It just sometimes means the acknowledgement of the fear and then making choices after that acknowledgement. So in your case with the Alt MBA program, you're afraid of risking things. There's a big risk involved, and you're afraid of losing something that you have, whatever it is. So if you were to do the not brave thing, that would be just to ignore it and do it anyways, and then like have a panic attack afterwards, maybe.
Right.
You still might have a panic attack after you do the brave thing, but at least then you have started from a place of honesty and a place of vulnerability, saying, wow, I'm about ready to click this button and I am so terrified. Okay, here it goes. Click. That's a lot different than do it. the manic decisions of just do it anyways.
Is this an important point as well, though, in as much as understanding that I'm fearful of doing a Kickstarter campaign, and then sitting down and meditating on why that fear exists, and then using that knowledge and that understanding to actually go ahead and do the task anyway, but also to do more work later on and more growth work and get involved in more issues that really deals with this problem. So let's be honest, like these
possibly. I mean, I would say that, it's different for everyone because again, everyone's situation is going to be different. So, but this is a really great example. So, an example of the way that you could utilize your fear with pushing the publish button on this thing. You could talk to your wife about it. You could talk to your kid. Like sometimes kids have really great advice about how to conquer fear. It's uncanny. You can connect with other people. There's that connection word again. You can also just express yourself, which is, I'm biased to expression. So, a way you can actually utilize that expression of fear to your advantage, especially in a Kickstarter or fundraising campaign, is to say, listen, I have done the hard work. I know exactly why this ask is so terrifying to me, because I don't want to know that you don't value me as a human being. And part of me would rather live in a world where I'm just, imagining that everyone loves me as much as they do. And by pressing publish on this and asking you to give me money, that is almost like saying, do you value me as a human being? Am I worth it to you? However, I know that this project is not about me. It's about the things I'm going to do after I get done with this Alt MBA program. And here's the reason why I'm so excited about this. So that alone, I'm glad we haven't recorded, because if you wanted to transcribe that would be a really great.
No, I was just going to say, you've just written my Kickstarter campaign for me.
Go for it. But I mean, this is how you can actually utilize the fear, because if you start from a place of honesty, it gives you a handhold to pull yourself up into vulnerability and to use a greater amount of defiant expectation and imagination and all the other ingredients that are involved in bravery. But starting from that place of honesty is so important. Because otherwise then you're not willing to acknowledge all of the facets or all of the variables involved in your decision-making process. So, there are 3 reasons why people do brave things, or there's more than 3, but the 3 main big ones are that bravery is contagious. So if you surround yourself by other people who are doing Kickstarter campaigns, it's going to be easier for you to push publish on the Kickstarter campaign, because that that new thing has now been normalized.
Yeah.
And is now an expectation in your life. So bravery is contagious. Bravery is worth it. And that's you talking about, hey, this is what I'm going to do with my alt MBA program. I'm going to talk to X amount of many people, and we're going to change this many lives. And because we're going to change this many lives, all of these things are going to happen. So you're then focused on not the fact that it's so difficult right now, but you're focused on the fact that, yeah, it's difficult now, but I'm doing it because of all this other stuff that I'm aiming for, and all these other people who I love and want to serve. So it's contagious, it's worth it. And, oh my gosh, I already forgot the third one because I haven't had enough tea this morning.
It's have a quick drink of tea.
Oh my gosh. No, I mean, so it's contagious, it's worth it. And there's going to be this part of you that when you're doing something brave, you can't just mask what you're going through. You know, you can't put on that brave face, because it's just a brave face.
Yeah, it was something. Right? It was something you said just before you started talking about the 3 reasons. It it made me think of leadership. So you said if you want to do a Kickstarter campaign, you surround yourself with people who are doing Kickstarter campaigns, then bravery becomes contagious. Therefore, it's a lot easier if you press that publish button. This is why Strive Community Forum is so important, folks. I did an Instagram live video today talking about the fear of brilliance, where the fear of me not wanting to create a mastermind group, so I'm going to have to do one. And I said on there, like we're a small little community here. There's 285 people subscribed to the list, but there's about 40 people on Strive, probably 10 to 15 regularly posting in the forum. You know, there's a lot of people that ain't. And it's a shame that you're not, because the people on there who are sharing and being vulnerable, who are having light bulb moments, who are really taking action to change their lives and to become someone who doesn't drink alcohol, it is contagious. You see somebody really doing well, talking about what worked for them, and it makes you feel like doing it.
So that third reason why people do brave things is because it's needed.
I knew you'd remember.
And thank you. So it's those of your community who's not engaging. They might be not engaging because maybe they haven't been immersed in the courageous culture that you're creating just yet. Maybe, and you know, that's a choice on their part as much as it is on your part. So it's, you know, it takes 2 to tango. So they don't know what their life is going to look like on the other side of this really difficult thing that they've said they want to go through.
Yeah.
But then a lot of times we fail to recognize how much it's actually needed in our life by other people. Like other people need you to put your pants on and go get groceries so that you can eat and stay alive, so that you can one day have a kid and teach him how to throw a baseball bat because he's going to be the next biggest football player or something like that. You know what I mean? Like,
you were the same as me then. I was thinking, I don't know no baseball players. Please don't ask me.
So
you should have stuck with a cello.
but we I know, right? So but we have this like inability sometimes when we are faced with so much fear to ignore the possibilities.
Yes.
And when we acknowledge that possibility can occur, even though it seems awful, or even though we are feeling victimized and back into a corner, there's still going to be possibility. And you know, bravery is a lot easier when we acknowledge that, listen, if I say what I really am thinking right now in this online forum, there's probably someone else in this group that's thinking the exact same thing. and they need me to say it because I have a little bit of experience about XYZ. So
what I see a lot, and we always pick people up on this actually, is the modus operandi is for somebody to spew out what's on their mind, and then right at the bottom, I'm sorry that I rambled, or I'm sorry that I put this on you, or I'm sorry that I shared this with you. And we keep saying, no, stop apologizing. Like it's this almost impulse to apologize, which is preventing you from doing more and more of this. This is acceptable. This is why we're here. This is how we should be. And this is how we were as kids. This is when we enjoyed life before society kind of pigeonholed us into, corralled us into little areas. I want to touch on honesty. We talked about honesty a little bit earlier on. What about somebody who believes that they are rejected and misunderstood in the world, that they can't trust anybody, so they have to drink in order for them to turn into somebody else because they cannot connect on the level they want to, because they've been hurt in the past. So they've tried to be vulnerable, they've tried to share with somebody, but it's been kicked back in their face, and now they just think, I can't trust anybody. Not this one person out of 7.5 billion has hurt me. Maybe the other 7.4 billion, God knows how many, won't. How does this fit in? What bravery fit into this? How could we help somebody who's like that?
When you have been wounded by rejection, it's a very safe and very logical response to retreat and nurse your wounds. And I think that's fine.
Mm-hmm.
Like, especially if you're going to have to go back out there eventually. If I got, if I was in a battle of some sort and got a really big wound, it would be better for me and the cause that I'm fighting for me to go heal from that wound than for me to keep going and just die on the field.
Yeah.
Like it is if sustainability and health and just an overall well-being is part of your goal, then it's totally okay to nurse your wounds. Now you have to nurse your wounds in a healthy way. You can't just, go back to the same old cycle that you had been going through in numbing your pain, because numbing your pain is not the same as nursing your wounds, because sometimes you have to clean the wound and that hurts. And sometimes you have to stay still and rest, especially if you've broken a bone or something. And it's not easy to do that kind of healing. So I know it's not a direct answer, like here you do these 5 things, but I think a lot of times people who can't trust other people, they have a hard time trusting people for a reason. And it's a good reason. Because somebody previous in life, whether it was the most recent rejection they received or whether it was like a parent or something, somehow there's a really logical reason why they can't trust everyone in the world. And if trusting others is something that you want to do, then start small. There's no reason why you have to start with like your twin flame or your like soulmate or something, trying to find your soulmate and trusting them with everything you have. Just start by trusting the grocery clerk to give you the right number, and start from there, and then go to the bus driver or the taxi driver, or, and just start acknowledging where you can trust. Because there's going to be this line for you of like, oh, wow, I can trust everyone who I see every day for shorter than 5 minutes at a time. But the second that I see somebody more frequently or on a daily basis or something, that's a boundary. Somehow I can't trust them. That's a hard thing for me. that's a great thing. Like those kinds of introspection pieces that you discover in your healing are going to be really useful, because then you can go, okay, well, this person's at the 8-minute mark. I really want to keep trusting them because they seem like a nice person, and oh gosh, I'm going to see him tomorrow and we're going to be together for an hour. Okay, that's a boundary. I'm going to cross this boundary and I'm terrified, and here we go. I'm going to push the button. We're going to do the thing. Does that help a little?
Yeah, what I'm getting out of that is, one, it is perfectly normal and acceptable to be feeling tremendous hurt, lack of trust, and an unwillingness to share vulnerability and almost be authentic if you've been hurt by somebody.
Yes.
That means that when dealing with somebody like that, or being in and around someone like that, there needs to be a tremendous amount of empathy, presence, and understanding for what the person's going through, and to be able to communicate effectively one way or the other that you understand them. Because I guess, and this is something that happens to me a lot of time on the forum, is someone will say to me, Lee, you don't understand me. Which can be quite damaging if you're trying to coach somebody or help somebody overcome a hurdle. It's like, you don't get me. So what I'm getting from you here is, there needs to be that an understanding that there is a process to go through of healing, and time seems to be the thing that jumps out at me, is that all of these things take time. I think one of the things that I was thinking about as well, Emily, is
it can take time, but it also can, well, I would say two things. So the person who is waiting for someone else to be more trusting, they have their own set of boundaries. And one of them might be time. Like, listen, right. I have my, like, if we're talking about a romantic relationship, and like the husband can't trust his wife, but the wife wants him to, and they haven't had kids yet. Well, the wife really wants to have kids someday, but if the husband can't trust her, then how can she trust him to be a good parent? And she has to move on eventually if she wants to have kids, because you can't, you got a biological clock dealing with, there are like constraints that you cannot control in life. That's one of them. Like, our physical health is sometimes one of those things. And so as the person who's waiting for someone else to finish healing, you have your own boundaries that you can acknowledge. You have your own constraints that you can control, but you might not be able to control other elements of your life. So doing the same kind of introspection of, okay, I can wait for this person to learn to trust, but I'm not willing to mow the lawn because that's, if I have to mow the lawn, then that's my line, like, you have to acknowledge, that's a funny example, but you have to acknowledge where your own boundaries are. If it's going to take, if you're, as a coach, or I do creative consulting for creative business owners. If I know that I'm not spending my time wisely and in a way that honors all of my clients, if I continue to work with a client who is unwilling to take my advice and unwilling to do their homework and do the work. And so there is a line with me. Like, I'm willing to wait on my clients and make sure that they can, like, get their ducks in a row and do, whatever. But there is a line for me that, like, the second, you, I don't know, roll your eyes at me or something like that, then that's going to be like a good indicator that it's time to part ways.
Yeah, I run into this problem all the time, the truth, but alcohol, because the training course is so thorough, it's so deep, it's so time consuming, it needs a lot of effort. And if you don't keep up with it, you fall behind. And especially if we can't deal with the resistance right at the outset. And there's a line with me there as well. It's okay, this isn't happening. You're not ready to do this work right now. Let's have a look at this again in the future, maybe, but right now is not your time. So what about?
I would say this as a business owner, I mean, as a business consultant, I would say if your people are telling you you don't understand me, you need to pay attention to that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just not, it's a yellow flag. It's not a red flag.
No,
I really like go, okay, you have my attention.
No. For me, when somebody tells me that I don't understand them, it's a red flag for me. And this is communication via written form.
Yeah.
So it's not, we're not talking like this, and that can often lead to miscommunication, because more so than if you're talking to each other. So what I've started to do now is to do little videos, just to paraphrase a little bit and to make sure that I do what David Burns calls feeling empathy and thought empathy, just to say, look, let me just check that I understand you here. And if that is right, that must make you feel X, Y, and Z. And that's working for me a lot more. It does, but I think when you work with addicts, there's a lot of it that comes up. It's like, nobody understands me. I am completely different than anybody else in the world, and nobody gets what I'm going through right now.
Which might be actually true.
Yes.
Because in that very precise moment in history and space and time, they are correct. No one is feeling the exact same way.
No.
And so that is a hard thing to deny. And that's part of, that's why it's so important to have internal bravery, because if we're constantly just trying to be brave on the outside with other people, and we're not willing to be brave just to ourselves and just within ourselves, then that uniqueness of how precious that fear can feel is lost. And that alone is worth grieving in some respects. There will be people who don't agree with me on all the way, but when you are feeling fear at a very high degree, the notion of comfort and pain, those emotions that swirl around comfort and pain, are very precious. And you want to hold them near and close. It's like your security blanket, and the having somebody take that away from you possibly is really terrifying. It's really terrifying. It's like this meta version of fear. You've got like triple layers of fear. And so I commend anybody who's able to say, you don't understand me, because that in and of itself takes bravery. And yet it is also important to stay open on both sides, to stay open to listening and connecting with each other. So yeah.
We have a feedback form that we use every week on the 3-month course, that asks, that rates whether or not you believe your moderator gets you, understands you, whether you believe your moderator is faking how much they like you, that kind of stuff. And I think if you take the form away, as human beings, as people who are connected and in our relationships, we should be doing that anyway. But for me and the way I grew up, that was not part of the game. I wasn't there to connect with anyone. It was all about me. That's how I grew up. So and as a drinker, I wasn't even thinking about these things, Emily, until I stopped at the age of 35. Like, I got to 35 and didn't even know what the word empathy meant. I didn't know anything about emotions, nothing,
Yeah.
Um,
Well,
go.
I would say, the difference between sympathy and empathy, sympathy is acknowledging that someone may have fear, but empathy is actually feeling that fear with them.
Hmm.
And a lot of times we mistake one for the other. And I think, our world would be better with a lot more empathy. And it would also be one of the reasons why I ended up publishing my book, how I did and when I did, and with the people that I worked with, all of those things, is because I knew that our world needs more bravery.
Hmm.
If we have more, if we have more people willing to have this internal bravery and acknowledging that, wow, this person's not connecting with me like I want to be connected with. If we have more people saying, wow, I really want a marriage that's really awesome and wonderful and fun and respectful, then we wouldn't have children from that marriage that are those same qualities. In the US, we are still dealing with a lot of political drama, and also legitimately awful and terrifying stories of gun violence. And there are people that, if gun violence and mental health, that's like like they are hand in hand here in the US. And I know that if we have more people who know what bravery is and know how to be brave for each other and for themselves, that mental health would probably be a little bit more of a central part of our culture. And we would probably be willing to make better laws around guns and gun violence, just because people are standing up and saying what needs to be said, or saying, hey, listen, I see that you're really depressed and angry. Let's get you some help. You don't have to stay in your room all alone checking the internet for violent things. So at the end of the day, we need you to be brave in a very individual, unique, and precious as that could possibly ever be received. That's how I mean it. We need you specifically to be brave, because there are things that, and people and moments that only you are going to go through, where you need to be brave in those moments. There's just the resonance and the exponential world change that can happen from one person being brave is absolutely mind-blowing.
Well, you heard it, folks, from the expert herself, Emily Ann Peterson, author of Bare Naked Bravery and the host of your own podcast, right?
Yeah.
Go out there and be brave. Do it.
Yes.
Do it.
Yes.
And, if you're listening to this, you're already being brave in my book. Yeah. Listening to me waffle on takes complete bravery. Emily, thank you for joining us. I've really enjoyed my time with you. I wish you all the success in the future. Hope your book sells a gazillion copies and your podcast is superb and everything that you're doing in a creative way works out for you. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.